Good evening, chat. Hello. Happy Black Friday. Black. The blackest of Fridays. Hopefully, you guys didn't trample anyone to death for a TV. If you did, I hope you don't get caught. But please tell me you didn't do that. Anyway, we have an interesting one tonight. It's not a super long one, but it's interesting in what it is about. It's about SpaceX. And SpaceX suffering a private challenge under the Clean Water Act about what it did in response to, well, it had a bit of an oopsie when it launched one of its rockets. And it came up with a plan to fix the oopsie, but then environmentalist groups got involved. So it's very interesting. It's very interesting how the whole thing breaks down. But also, like I said, it's just the entire situation is interesting. How SpaceX fixed their problem, because it's pretty creative. It's pretty cool. And we're going to go through all of that in a minute here, but I just wanted to let everybody come in. So if you guys are new, my name is Sean, also known as Potentially Criminal. I am a defense attorney over in the Cleveland, Ohio area. And tonight, like I said, this is not a criminal case, but it is very interesting. It is a legal battle that SpaceX just won over the week, right before Thanksgiving. Elon brought home another dub. And it's just, it if you don't know anything about this, is really how it goes. All right. So we got a couple of people in here now. Defense attorney and official Stony spokesperson. Yes. Yes. Evan S. says, thanks to Clarence Laserized Thomas for nuking Chevron. That's actually not a reason here why this thing has happened. And we'll get to that. But yes, Chevron is very important for getting nuked. But this isn't a Chevron issue. This is not a Chevron issue. We need an Elon Jack. That'd be funny. That would be very funny. Hey, Mr. Sen, how you doing? Uncle Bob, how are you? The environmental group was just being pusses. Well, they weren't wrong, and we're gonna get to why they weren't completely wrong, but they weren't right. We're gonna get through all that. We're gonna get through all that. And guys, this is probably gonna be a little bit of a shorter stream. A little bit later after this, we will go ahead and we're gonna work on trying to get this bad boy painted up. So we'll be trying that next after a little while. So just a little bit of a programming of tonight. So hold on here. What did people message me? All right, here. What is all this? Somebody just sent me a bunch of stuff. Let's see here. All right. So we're just going to skip all that for now because that's all stuff related to the RQ. We're not going to worry about that right now. Did I hear that Trump doesn't trust the FBI to do background checks on his people? Oh, I 100% agree. I wouldn't trust him either. And Brad says yes. Alex Jones voice him. Yes, they use the rockets, the chemtrails on the rockets. They use them to pacify us, chat. Yes, those chemtrails are everywhere. It's part of the globalist conspiracy with the chemtrails. No. So we're not talking about Assad, no. I mean, what we really need, what you need to know is apparently the Syrians are on the move. So they're whooping ass. So, Uncle Bob's B says Stoney's got $2 beer night. Not tonight. It's not Thursday. But they do have bands out there tonight. They have bands tonight and tomorrow night. ISIS was released there too. Well, ISIS wasn't itself released, but the people that formed ISIS were released. And by that, at the time, Syria was used as a jumping off point and logistical hub for jihadist fighters to attack into Iraq. Well, once Iraq ended, Assad had to do something with all these crazy guys in his country, so he jailed them. And then very shortly after the Arab Spring happened, he couldn't defeat it, so he turned the Islamic fighters loose on the streets and said, "Go fight," and that saved him from being toppled. Did I see there's a video leaked of Destiny performing a suction action with his mouth on someone thinking might be Nick Fuentes? I mean, are you surprised? I haven't seen it yet, but are you surprised? I mean, we're learning everything else that's going on. I'm just saying. So, I haven't seen it, but I'm not surprised given what we already know so far that he's admitted to in his Discords. All right, anyway, chat, we got enough people in here. We're going to get started. Okay, so you guys know SpaceX, Elon Musk organization. They are going to Mars at some point. Well, it all starts, we have to go back to April of 2023. Okay? And this is the Starship. Starship is the Starship being launched, and it's on one of the heavy boosters. And before we get too far, we actually probably need to do this just to make so we understand what we're looking at here and the scale of what we're looking at here, chat. So this is how SpaceX's Starship compares. Okay. So for example, we have over here on the far side, the Soyuz FG. We have that. And that's pretty big. That's a pretty big boy. That's a big old rocket ship. I think you guys would agree. That's what we currently use to go to the moon. Or not to the moon, but like International Space Station. You want to go there, you're riding the Soyuz capsule, you're riding this thing up here on the top, and you can go to the space station. Okay? There's the Ariane 5, that is a heavy lift rocket. That puts stuff into space, satellites, heavy payloads. And then you have SpaceX, the Falcon 9. That was kind of the first big one from SpaceX, and they've been launching these forever. Once again, this is like for satellites and other large payloads. Then you have the SLS, the Space Launch System. Space Launch System is what is being built, and that is what the government wants to use to go forward in space travel. It's used by NASA. Okay, chat. And it takes and if you look at parts of it, it basically you kind of graft parts from the space shuttle onto it. So, for example, it uses the boosters, it uses the fuel tank. Like they kind of made parts out of things initially. And then it takes over for the other different launch vehicles that the government was trying to use for a while. So like these for a while were like the solid rocket boosters. These were here, and then this was the big tank that they put on the space shuttle. They had reused a lot of it. They've reused it. They've kind of configured things. This is NASA's project right here. This is NASA. Okay, this is NASA's setup. Here is the Saturn V. This was the Apollo program. This took us to the moon. This took us to the moon. So, I'm not showing outlines of Baldos, chat. Just giving you guys a scope of what's going on here. And then we finally have, and Saturn V is one of the biggest rockets for a while. I mean, look how big it is compared to the Soyuz launcher. It's massive. So from 2001 to 2019, they used this rocket. And in 1973, they quit using this rocket. Well, starting in 2023, the SpaceX Starship, it is 120 meters. That's huge. It is massive. All right. Now, they launched one of these back in 2023. And just so you guys understand, this is down. And before we get too far, we actually need to go back to, we're going to zoom out real quick. If you guys are familiar with America and the United States, this is the state of Texas. And if you go all the way down to the bottom of Texas to near Brownsville, SpaceX built a launch facility. Okay. Now they have all this down here, Boca Chica Village. They put all this here. Here's the production site for everything. If you guys have noticed, this is a state park. This is all wetlands around it. Well, from here, SpaceX built the launch sites that it owns. Obviously, they can use the ones over in Florida. They have ones over in Cape Canaveral. They could use these ones here, but they don't want to because they use their own. So they built their own launch facility. And they have a orbital launch pad, and then they have their big launch pad. All right. And this is obviously an older picture as well. It's all under construction. But this is it. And it's right on the ocean. So as we watch this, watch what happens in the ocean over here, chat, because this is actually very important. So as we watch what happens in the ocean here. All right, do you guys see all these little poofs in the water and poofs on the ground? Keep that in mind. You're seeing a bunch of poofs on the ground. This was the original pad, yes. So notice all those splashes out there. Notice all those splashes. And notice all those little puffs in the water. That's just so we're just here to understand it's not a good thing. Anyway, we're gonna keep going. Look at it. Look at it everywhere. And look at down here. It's going in every direction. So as it keeps going, Chad, it keeps going up in the sky. And eventually this actually turned out to be, the flight did not include a successful launch because ultimately there was a problem with the rocket and ended up kind of crashing and burning. Yes, that is Clyde coin. That is symbolic of Clyde coin. So here's the problem. That rocket sounds great, right? That 120 meter tall rocket. Well, there were some issues with it. And this is a picture of the launch pad as it was being built right here. And I hate the fact I have to use Reddit, but these are some of the best pictures available. And then here's the picture of it afterwards. If you guys notice, there's a lot of things missing. There's a lot of things missing here. All that concrete and everything is gone. And it only got worse from there, chat. Basically, what happened were chunks of fucking concrete shooting out in every direction. Like it destroyed, like this van. Thankfully, no one died. Thankfully, nobody died. But imagine that hit you. Imagine that hit you. I mean, things went everywhere. It was, in one way, it was great. But this is, they were finding, they found damage everywhere. Pieces of rebar and concrete chunks. Parts of the launch pad. I mean, look at that thing up in the corner here. All torn up and destroyed and pieces of debris everywhere. It actually got some, and here's a great example of this one here. It destroyed the gate. The gate itself got destroyed. Knocked over a crane. The rocket was a little more powerful than they anticipated. Here's just some more of just the desolation that rocket created. Thankfully, they had these HESCO barriers there, but it destroyed the HESCO barriers. Now, going back to this caused like a 4-acre wildfire in the state park that was readily contained, but it caused a wildfire. So they were a little spicy on what they were trying to do. They were just a little spicy on what they were looking to do there. It was just a bit much. It was just a bit much. You could say it was a little too much. It was a little too much. So SpaceX, they had to come up with a plan. And they actually did. They came up with a pretty cool plan to handle this stuff. Because they had to figure out what they were going to do and like, how do we fix this issue? How do we fix it? Well, there weren't too many options available. So the one thing they came up with was using water. And they did what's called the deluge system. So just a tad extra hydrogen fuel. Yeah. So basically, they completely wiped out the space pad. Plan, make the rocket electric. No, they did not. They applied a watermark to the pad. No. What they did instead is they did what's called the deluge system. And it's actually pretty cool, chat. Here's what it looks like. There's two separate views of it, and we're going to show it here. So here's from one view. And just look how, if you guys understand the scale of this, look how big it is compared to the people walking around. And this is them rebuilding it. They had to rebuild the entire launch pad. Okay. So, I mean, this is all the stuff they had to fix. And also, guys, there's the rocket. There's the Starship part. There's the top part of it.
Attention, Starbase. The entire pad is now clear. All personnel, please exit the pad now.
This is the way they planned on defeating the rocket damage from the rocket engines, using the water to soften the blow and absorb all the heat energy. So if there you guys go, it just shows you how much of this rocket and like of the blast. And if you want to see another angle of how powerful it is, here's a top-down look. And notice this was just months later. That first rocket launch happened in April 2023. By July, look at this. By July, not Eric July, but by July. Although Eric July does live in Texas, so coincidence? I think not. They were fully testing this that fast. So that was their way of fixing this. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool idea. Pretty cool idea. It's not a government job, Lamal. I know, but it's really cool. It's really cool. So I got to set up a default description for your streams. Kimbo, I put one in. If it didn't show up, I will go back and fix it. Sorry. Angela says, what the hell is this? This is SpaceX's ability to use water to soften the blast of their rockets. Because when they launched their rocket before, they destroyed the launch pad. So they had to come up with a way to protect the concrete. So they're using water to absorb the damage. And they recycle the water. And what do they do after a while? Well, they get rid of the water. Oh, Eric July went to college at Corpus Christi. Dun, dun, dun. Now, what does SpaceX do with the water? Well, keep in mind, where does SpaceX at? Guess where they're at? They're on the water, so they're going to dispose of the water, right? Makes sense. So they're allowed to dispose of the water. Because what have they really done to the water? Nothing. Has the water been through a chemical process? No, it's just regular distilled water. That's all it is. It's not specially treated. It's literally just regular water. It's potable water. They don't use salt water, but they use water that they can flood the tanks with. And you see they have all these tanks of water. This is all meant to flood that and protect it. Well, Elon, they boiled some of it. Okay, yes. It's all burnt. Yes, Jefferson, right. It's burnt water. We can't use it. It's ruined now. You burned it. You burn the water. You burn the water. With the water being burnt, there's nothing left to do. Doc says, is this a room full of anti-Eric July tards? No. We're just pointing out Eric July is the mastermind everyone claims he is. He's behind all of it. No, actually, I think Eric July is hilarious. So no. So the solution to pollution is dilution. Well, yeah, it's very true. Eric July did do 9/11. I heard that as well. And Garrett says, essentially, it's a giant bidet. Yeah, kind of. Kind of. And Maddie, yes, this is so Elon at SpaceX became the victim of lawfare. And what exactly happened to them? Well, there was a complaint filed. There was a complaint filed in the Southern District of Texas because that's where this all happened. Now, the Save RGV. Save RGV is actually to save the Rio Grande Valley, because if you guys remember, guess where we are. This is the Rio Grande River, right? The Rio Grande, and it separates the United States and Mexico, and it empties out right here. That's the mouth of it, and this is the Rio Grande that flows all the way along and makes up the majority of the border with Texas and Mexico. Because if you go all the way up here, all the way into the north, guess what? It's the Rio Grande. Rio Grande. And then you go all the way to where the U.S. and Texas, or U.S. and Mexico, not U.S. and Texas. It keeps going, chat. It goes on forever. And it goes all the way up. And the Rio Grande goes all the way up to El Paso. And then from there, it goes into Texas. But all the way. And if you guys didn't know that, this is the entirety of the length of the Rio Grande, forming the border with Mexico. Right here, this entire thing is the river. All the way to El Paso. And then from there, it goes up into Texas and then New Mexico. So it's a big fucking river. But it's people want to protect the wetlands. They want to protect their rivers. They want to protect their streams. So they are a citizen. They're bringing a citizen lawsuit against Space Exploration Technologies Corporation, also known as SpaceX. They're doing it under the Federal Water Pollution Control Act, also known as the Clean Water Act. And what do they want? They want an injunctive relief. They also want civil penalties, and they also want attorney's costs. Obviously, attorneys get their money out of this. But the Clean Water Act allows you as a individual citizen to file actions, even if the government's not doing it. And they want to stop, because they want to abate SpaceX's reoccurring unpermitted discharges of untreated industrial wastewater from the deluge system at the Boca Chica launch site. So that's where this starts. That's the issue here. It's where everything goes. Everything goes forward from it. I named some sorts I once drank from it. It tasted funny. Well, I wouldn't do that anyway. I wouldn't do that anyway. So, what do you do with this from here? Well, they want to stop the water discharge. They want to stop the discharge. Hold on here. Where is all right. Why did I just lost my spot? All right. So they say the court has subject matter jurisdiction because it's a federal question. And it's true. The Clean Water Act is federal law. It's 33 USC 1251. So that's where they're allowed to be here. And you can file a citizen suit to enforce effluent standards and limitations. The relief request is authorized under federal law as well. And it's for a relief based upon a declaratory judgment. They're also seeking injunctive relief under the Clean Water Act. And they're seeking the civil penalties. So this entire case is encapsulated under federal law. So we don't have to worry about the fact that SpaceX may be in Texas. The Rio Grande Valley people are in Texas. You don't have to worry about any diversity jurisdiction. Doesn't matter. They are suing under federal law, so they're allowed to go forward with this lawsuit. I keep saying discharge. Well, I'll figure out something else. So this is what they're going to do. And they say venues proper. Well, because this all happened and, the launch site and the unauthorized pouring of water out is located and have occurred in Cameron County, Texas, which is within the Brownsville division of the Southern District of Texas. So they're just pointing out, yeah, this is the right place to go. And they're literally down the road from Brownsville, Texas. They also include a notice saying that the Clean Water Act has statutory notice requirements. So they had to send a letter to SpaceX chief operating officer and the corporation service company. Now, I mentioned this before, chat. To be a corporation, you have to have somebody who's your agent who can receive service on your behalf. And it's somebody who's the contact person. There are companies that serve as that function. So that way you don't have to pick a random person. Or, for example, like I have a company, Martin Media LLC. Well, I'm the registered agent for that company, and I have an address you can serve things to. That's how those work. So you have to have, but I could have also paid for what's called the corporation service company because there's one here in Ohio, and they take all of that for you, and they have an office down in Columbus. You serve them. They would then contact me and say, hey, Sean, we have a bunch of paperwork for you. Which, in this case, it's their registered agent in Texas. RGV gave SpaceX notice of violations and of its intent to file suit after 60 days should those violations continue. And this is what you have to, guys, with the Clean Water Act, you have compliance standards and you have check marks you have to do. So the environmentalists couldn't just run to court and file a lawsuit. They had to notify SpaceX and tell them, hey, fix your problem. Fix your problem. You're not doing it right. So then in July, in a second letter, they sent then to the president of SpaceX, and they also sent the general manager of the launch site. The environmentalists gave SpaceX notice of the additional violations and another 60-day notice. So here's the issue. Every time you know of new violations, you have to give that person time to fix it. So they learned of additional violations. Okay, well, now that their 60-day clock on those new ones starts. So you have to give them time to do it. The environmentalists then also mailed a copy of both letters to the administrator of the EPA. They also did the regional administrator for Region 6, the US DOJ, and the state of Texas through the Attorney General, and the Texas Commission for Environmental Quality. They don't have to do all those things, but they did because they're very upset. And they point out that because of this, 60 days have passed since SpaceX and the federal and state agencies got both the first and second notice letters for the violations. And that's to show they've complied. They're trying to exhaust all the remedies that show they comply with the statute fully. They also point out neither the EPA nor the state has commenced or is diligently prosecuting an action to redress the violations that were put forward. And the violations in the notice letters are continuing at this time and are unreasonably likely to continue in the future. Yes, SpaceX is going to keep using this method. They have been using it for over a year now. Flooding the launch pad with water prevents the launch pad from being destroyed, so it keeps working. Nero says, ironically, one of the byproducts of the Methalox reaction is water that is definitely more pure than what's ever in the Rio Grande. Yes. That would be very interesting to see how pure it is. So, Streaky says maybe because they're not violations. And that's the issue here. That's how this works. The environmentalists say, hey, you're breaking law, and SpaceX like, fuck you, we're not. And then it'll come down to whether or not you'll be able to sue them. So that's kind of where this is coming down to is this a violation of the law or not right now? Obviously, SpaceX kept doing what it's doing and has been doing what it's doing. So they say, Save RGV is a Texas nonprofit that advocates for environmental justice and sustainability. And this is all you need to know, environmental justice. Stop reading there, they're communists. And for the health and well-being of the Rio Grande Valley community. RGV is a citizen within the meaning of 33 USC 1365. And that's because under the Clean Water Act, organizations can sue, not just people. It is an organization with an interest that is adversely affected, and its members have an interest that is adversely affected by SpaceX's violations. And if you guys remember going back to, there's other case, there's cases here where and it's not necessarily the hold on. So if we go back to like the Chevron case where Chevron deference was put forward, it was Chevron versus the National Resources Defense Council. Now, the National Resources Defense Council sounds like, that sounds like a pro, like we're defending natural resource. No, it's an environmentalist group. The same way Lujan versus Defenders of Wildlife, another Supreme Court case, which established that environmentalist groups have a higher burden and a higher standard. There are multiple times environmentalist groups, the Sierra Club, all these groups will go forward all the time with filing stuff. Snoop is saying, wait, is this EPA level stuff? Yeah. The Clean Water Act is federal law. The Clean Water Act is federal law. So they point out that RGV includes residents of South Texas, residents who swim, boat. I can't imagine people are swimming in the river. Boat, fish, birdwatch, and otherwise recreate in and around the waterways near the Boca Chica launch site. Well, hopefully they weren't there catching chunks of concrete with their face. Hey, guys, we saw all those big puffs of water were pieces of concrete going like 1,000 miles an hour. Now, they point out here's the problem. SpaceX is unpermittedly discharging untreated industrial wastewater and it degrades the water quality and it harms aquatic life in these waters. The industrial discharge from the deluge system is ongoing, continuous, and occurs regularly during each launch and each static firing. So yes, every time SpaceX is launching a rocket or they're doing the static testing, and that's where they basically hold the rocket down and fire it. Well, they use that system so they don't destroy the launch pad. Ag is saying that river has gators. The Rio Grande has, there's gators in the Rio Grande River? Really? Really? They do? Huh. No way. Hold on. Hold on. And then why do people swim the river? Why do people swim the river? Okay, so yes, apparently American alligators range from the Sabine River of East Texas to the Gulf of Mexico, across the industrial marshes and the intercoastal marshes. Wow! Then why do people swim the river and not get eaten by, like, how come Mexicans don't get eaten by the alligators? That's impressive to me. That's impressive to me. They more like wade the river. Well, still, I wouldn't wade a river full of alligators either. I'm not an idiot. They swim where the gators are not in the shallows. Yeah, well, that doesn't mean the gator can't go there. Just because there's alligators doesn't mean you're not going to get eaten. Yes, but that also doesn't mean they're not going to eat you either. I'll pass on that. I will pass on that. So the pirates are scary. Well, everything's scary. Anyway, we're going to move on from here. The relief sought by this complaint, because ultimately that's what do you want? What do they want? What does Save RGV want? Well, they want to stop the unlawful discharges, and they believe their injuries are unlikely to be redressed except by an order from this court requiring SpaceX to stop the unpermitted discharges and comply with the other relief this court deems necessary. And they say if successful, this action will also result in civil penalties, and that would be, punishing SpaceX, which I'm sure finding them $1 million is really going to hurt them. They point out that RGV is suffering actual concrete injuries, no pun intended, that are fairly traceable to the defendant's violations and are redressable by the court. There are no other adequate remedies at law. Maybe. We'll see. Anyways, they say SpaceX owns the Boca Chica launch site. And it's near the town of Boca Chica, Texas, on the Gulf Coast. Yep. SpaceX is a for-profit corporation, is therefore a person under the Clean Water Act. Yep. SpaceX is listed as a registered agent, as a corporation service company. And they also do through the Lawyers and Corporation Service Company, and their mailing address is in Austin. But they talk about the Clean Water Act. So Congress enacted the Clean Water Act to restore the clean waters of the nation. And to be fair, guys, when the Clean Water Act happened, one of the biggest impetuses behind the Clean Water Act was the Cuyahoga River catching fire in Cleveland. The Clean Water Act was the government's response to things getting really bad. Like, we had a lot of environmental problems here in America. It really was a big deal. Decades of pollution that had just gone rampant and unchecked had caused a lot of problems. So it wasn't really, people might get mad about it, think it's all hippie claptrap, but we really did, you notice now we've been able to fix the problems. Rivers and streams are back to normal within a decade or two, but we had really poisoned a lot of places in America. Like I said, the fucking Cuyahoga River caught fire. And the Clean Water Act was passed in 1972, and believe it or not, Richard Nixon pushed for a lot of this stuff. Richard Nixon created the Environmental Protection Agency. Like, it's a normal thing. Like, you have to protect the environment a little bit because it had gotten destroyed. So the Clean Water Act is a real thing, and it does have a real purpose. So they want to make sure that it prohibits the discharge of any pollutant in the navigable waters except authorized by the Clean Water Act. So the Clean Water Act established the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, the NPDES program, where the EPA or an authorized state can issue permits which allow the lawful discharge of pollutants subject to certain conditions, meaning you have permission to do stuff if you meet certain rules. They argue that in Texas, TCEQ has the authority to issue these permits through the Texas permitting program. So these permits impose limitations on the discharge of pollutants and establish related monitoring and reporting requirements. Each discharge of any pollutant that is not authorized by a permit violates the Clean Water Act. And that makes sense. If you're given a permit that says you could do X, Y, and Z, you can't therefore do A, B, and C. If it's not on your permit, you're not allowed to do it. And then that's not really an issue there. And each violation of the Clean Water Act is grounds for enforcement action. So if you violate it 100 times, that's 100 separate instances of you violating the Clean Water Act. And they can seek that. It's not just considered one big one. And they talk about moving on here to citizen enforcement. So any citizen can file a civil action against a person who's in violation of an effluent standard or limitation under this chapter. And there are two limitations to the citizen suits. They say first, 60 days before filing the suit, you must give notice to the violation to the violator. And then 60 days after notice, you may bring that action in a federal court to enforce any ongoing violations. And the purpose of the notice is to give the alleged violator given an opportunity to bring itself in compliance with the act and thus render unnecessary the lawsuit. Which is important. Like, you should have the right to try to fix the problem. Secondly, the Clean Water Act bars a citizen suit if the EPA or a state has commenced and is diligently prosecuting a criminal or civil action in the court of the United States or a state to require compliance with the standard limitations or orders. So if you guys remember above, there's a reason why they said nobody is getting involved. Nobody is getting involved. So we have the right to do it. Nero's saying, does that notice need to be served or can they just mail it? No, that has to be served. You have to serve them with notice. Adam says, well, does that mean you can pollute? Stop for 60 days and then pollute again. I don't know if I would recommend, I would not recommend that to anybody who's screwing around the Clean Water Act. I would not recommend that course of action. I think that would look very poorly if the court were to find out. So no, I would not recommend that. Yes, Brad, I heard Clyde. He is, I'm not sure what he's doing. He's eating food right now. Oh, he heard his name. Hi, Bubba. You want to come here? You want to come here? You come here? Hey. Hi. Hey. Come here. You want a treat? You want a treat, Bubba? Come here. Come here. There's more where that came from. Come here, buddy. Hey. Come on. Clyde. Uh-oh. He smells something. Come here, buddy. Come here. What is it? Come on. Come on, Clyde. All right. Come here, buddy. Come here. Clyde. What do you think 2.0's got treats for you? I guess we're going to lose that battle. Clyde is AI, getting them all weeded up. Why not? Why not, chat? Oh. So we're gonna keep going here. We're gonna keep going, chat. So in addition, the Clean Water Act precludes a civil penalty action under the citizen suit where the EPA is also prosecuting. The state is prosecuting, or for which the EPA or state have issued a final order not subject to further judicial review, and the violator is paid a penalty assessed under the federal law or a comparable state law. So there are limits. So, for example, if the EPA has already started an action, you don't get to turn around and file an action as well. If the state government's filing it, so in this case, state of Texas, we're doing it, you'd be out of luck. Or if the EPA or the state have issued a final order and it's not subject to judicial review, and also like SpaceX has already been fined and they're paying on that fines. Well, guess what? You don't get to get involved. The government has precluded. It's considered exemption. They have precluded your involvement. They have exempted the field. So they said, once we do this, it's within our scope and you have no action rights. And they say if the citizen suit was filed prior to the commencement of one of these actions or notice was given prior to the government commencing action, and the citizen lawsuit was filed before the 120th day after notice was given. So if you happen to beat the government to the courthouse by following all the compliance standards, and you met the burden, you served them properly, you waited 60 days, and then you went to court and filed, and then a day later, the EPA filed, your case still survives. You have to beat them before their action starts. So, under the Clean Water Act, citizens can seek remedies for unpermitted discharges. And it also authorizes citizens to seek injunctive relief. Remember, guys, an injunction is a restraining order. It prevents you from doing things going forward. That you're banned from doing a certain action. And hold on here. What is... Hold that chat. All right, I don't know why that wasn't working. So they say for violations occurring after November 2nd, 2015, where penalties are assessed after December 23rd, 2020, each violation of the Clean Water Act subjects the violator to a penalty of up to $56,460 per day per violation. So if you have 10 violations, that's $564,000 per day you could be facing. These also allow for prevailing or substantially prevailing parties to recover litigation costs. So even if you don't you don't have to win everything. You have to substantially prevail. So even if you don't win all of it, you get recovery for litigation costs. Or if you win all the way, obviously you do, and you get attorney's fees and you get expert witness fees. And you're probably going to need expert witnesses if you're dealing with the environment, you're dealing with science. So there you go. Now, they talk about SpaceX's launch activities. So SpaceX operates its Starship / Super Heavy launch vehicle program down in Texas. And this includes the vertical launch area. And they say the launch site is surrounded by Boca Chica State Park. The park is used for swimming, snorkeling, surfing, fishing, bird watching, and kite surfing. The park is owned by the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department and managed the release with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in conjunction with the Lower Rio Grande Valley National Wildlife Refuge. So they also point out nearby the island is Brazos Island State Park. And that's located directly north of the beach and at the south end of the Lower Laguna Madre. The Brazos Island State Park is used for similar things: fishing, ocean fishing, surfing, camping, and nature study. That park is owned and operated by the Texas Parks and Wildlife Division. So we're hold on here. Where are we getting to? Job well done says let them try and collect. Well, if you don't, the violations, you're held in contempt of federal court. So that actually, you don't play that game. The federal court will come after you. So you don't want to be seen that way. Brad says kite surfing during a launch would be based. Well, Kite surfing during launch would be based, but not while those chunks of concrete are flying at you. So they come, and here's where we talk about chat. This is the thing we showed. On April 20th, 2023, SpaceX conducted its first test launch of the Starship and Super Heavy rocket. During launch, the concrete launch pad exploded, resulting in a large debris field and extensive damage to the nearby ecosystems. Following that launch, SpaceX took steps to reinforce the launch pad foundation and install steel plates over the foundation. SpaceX also implemented a deluge system, the water cooling elements that would be activated during each launch to protect the steel plates and avoid another explosion of the concrete foundation. Yep. Additional components include a fire suppression system. And that's because the detonation suppression water is available to the deluge system. So it activates the system during each launch and each static fire engine test. Because obviously, remember, they have to test the engines they're designing. So when activated, the deluge system pushes water up from ground tanks through holes in a large steel plate. The water flows at high pressure over the edge of the plate and into the surrounding area. Yep. So currently, SpaceX can discharge up to 361,000 gallons per static test fire launch or landing. So there's 358,000 gallons in the tanks, plus 3,000 gallons in the the detonation suppression water. With plans to add additional tanks in order to increase the maximum volume per event to as much as 422,000 gallons. That's a lot of water, chat. That's a lot of water. And they bring up, during the test fires of the rocket launches, the heat causes ablation of metals such as aluminum, arsenic, barium, copper, mercury, nickel, thallium, and zinc. And with each activation, the amount of metal ablated and subsequently deposited outside the VLA will accumulate. So it's not just the water, chat. They're saying what's going to be in the water, because that rocket is damaging it even with it there. It's meant to abate it, not to stop it. They say currently SpaceX is authorized to launch the Starship up to 5 times per year, and the Super Heavy 5 times per year. They say SpaceX is currently authorized to launch 10 Starship landings and 5 Super Heavy landings. They say these landings would occur at the vertical launch area, in which SpaceX may also activate the deluge system, meaning it would activate the system twice during the same launch and landing operation. And that's true. If you guys have never seen this, they launched the main booster, and then the booster itself. Oh, hold on here. We're going to... here is the booster right here, chat. This part from here to here. The booster separates from the rocket and it lands. And little arms come out of the launch tower and they catch it. And it lands under its own power. And basically has the rockets turning it on to slow its descent. It stabilizes and lands. It's a real thing. Now, they also say SpaceX has also requested authorization from the FAA to increase the landings to 25. And up to 25 landings of Starship and up to 25 annual landings of Super Heavy with authorization. They say each launch is preceded by at least one and sometimes multiple static fires. And SpaceX first tested the system on July 28th. And then they conducted static fire tests on August 6th, 2023, August 25th, October 20th, December 20th, December 29th, April 5th, May 8th, May 29th, and October 8th, 2024. So if you notice, some of these go out, some of these occur after the launch, because remember, this occurs in April. So the launch we're talking about that destroyed the launch pad would have occurred right here. But as you notice, 1, 2, 3, they did 3 of those afterwards. So they say the first deluge system occurred during a launch was on November 18th, 2023 on Starship Flight 2. It again used a deluge system during a launch that occurred on March 14th, 2024, Starship Flight 3. And again on June 6th, Starship Flight number 4, during which it activated the deluge system twice. And they point out that each activation constitutes an unpermitted discharge of industrial wastewater into the waters of the United States. But is it industrial wastewater? What does that mean exactly? We don't know what this is. Nero saying this is just pure lawfare. I think so, but remember, these people would be against it anyway, so they'd be complaining and bitching about it regardless. Regardless, they'd be doing this. So they want numerous things done here. They want, they incorporate their claim for reliefs. So they want each one of these times, July 28th, August 6th, August 25th, October 30th, November 18th, December 20th, December 29th, March 14th, April 5th, May 8th, May 29th, June 6th, and October 8th. They want all of these. They want all these to be violations because they sent these to waters without a permit under the Clean Water Act. They point out these ongoing, the violations are ongoing and likely to continue. Yeah, SpaceX is going to keep doing it. There's no question about it. SpaceX continues to operate the system without obtaining the requisite permits. And as of the date of this complaint, neither the EPA nor the state of Texas is diligently prosecuting the violations. And without a court order, it will continue. Of course, and that makes sense. Without a court order, they'll keep doing it. So what do they want ultimately? Well, this is also irreparably harming the waters of the United States in and around Boca Chica, including the South Bay of the lower Laguna Madre. So what do they want? Well, they want a declaratory judgment against SpaceX, saying they violated the Clean Water Act. Okay. They want to grant injunctive relief to ensure SpaceX will take all actions to prevent violations of the Clean Water Act. And they want them to stop, so the cessation of all discharges, unless authorized by the national or Texas discharging permit system issued under the Clean Water Act. And they want them to be in compliance with all application requirements. And that makes sense. They want the court to retain jurisdiction over this matter until SpaceX has come into compliance, which is not unheard of. That the court will keep the case open and keep it going and set status dates saying, have you complied, SpaceX? I mean, spoiler alert, they're not going to, but let's say it happened that way. Like, they would have routine checks to make sure they are, or that they're making progress. Excuse me. It's actually cold today. I don't know why I'm yawning. I'm just freezing. And they say they want to assess civil penalties of up to $56,000 per day. They want to award RGV the cost, including attorney's fees, and then all of the relief. And I think it's funny. Her name's Lauren Ice. It's not going to go well for you. It's not going to go well for you, Miss Ice. Ice to meet you. Benjamin says, as a chemical engineer, I'm very curious what the actual pollutant is. Well, I think if you had to ask them, they're talking about the ablation of what's going on out there. I think it's clear they're talking about the actual heat damage is destroying that plate of metal, which has got zinc and thallium in it. Well, because it's basically getting automatized, that's getting mixed in with the water. So the water is going to be, with these heavy metals in it. I think is what the argument they're trying to make. It's almost kind of because it's there when the launch pad burns up, it's all leaching into the water, and then that water is leaching into the local water. I think is their argument here. That's what I understand the argument to be. That's what I understand the argument to be. So SpaceX came out on its own, and they came up and they responded. So SpaceX came out and they said, this is space exploration's opposition to plaintiff's motion for an injunction and temporary restraining order. So they come through with this and they put together an entire thing. They point out SpaceX and its service to the U.S. space program. They talk about the launch site. Everything they did, they've done according to the rules and regulations that were available at the time. And why did it? Okay, there we go. They go through everything that's happened here, the development and use of the deluge system that they got an agreed order. Now, this is where I think it's important to take a look at why they developed this. So SpaceX does agree that, look, we had some problems here. SpaceX looked at this and goes, okay, well, the launch vehicle cleared the launch pad. The rocket engines damaged the launch pad. Yes, it did. Following the flight test, they installed the water deluge system. And the system also reduces environmental impacts by dampening vibrations. So they put out the system uses potable water purchased from the Brownsville Public Utilities Board. So what that means, they're not even pumping out water out of the Gulf of Mexico, which I know some of you might think, looking at the launch site, well, how do you know they didn't just go down to the ocean if this is the launch site and, run a line into the ocean and have a desalination plant? They didn't even do that. They didn't even do that here. Instead, they're buying water from the local utilities board, which is actually kind of impressive. Streaky says saltwater bad. That's why I said desalination. And Nico says it ain't cheap. Yeah, but I can't imagine the amount of water they're using for like 350,000 gallons every time you do a launch is cheap either. Jim Turner says, the water environment down there is horrible already. You can't make it worse. Foss says, then what would you do with the leftover salt? You could sell it. Don't drink the tap water. Okay. Well, we're not going to drink the tap water. So, anyways, they get onto it. The water is stored in clean, dedicated tanks and pumped to the system via clean, dedicated pipes installed for that purpose. And that's something that's important. They're not like, oh no, we're using the same when we're doing any of our industrial work. We're pumping out the same pipes and systems. No, they have dedicated water delivery systems, which makes sense. No chemicals or substances are added to the water. And they say because the rocket engine exhaust contains only water vapor and gaseous carbon dioxide, there's no change in the chemical makeup of the deluge water after contact with the exhaust. And they say while the rocket engines vaporize most of the water, about 20% of the liquid water may leave the launch pad. Water that leaves the pad is confined to an area located on SpaceX property, about 20 to 30 feet away from the pad near a stormwater outfall specified in the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan. So in July, the Texas Environmental Quality Group visited Starbase to learn about and observe the deluge system. SpaceX explained the system. It was demonstrated, and then they walked to the site, and the environmental quality people expressed no concerns that the system failed to meet Texas environmental law. And they said that they've used this multiple times between now and back in November 2023. So on all occasions, the system operated as designed. Each deployment of the system used about 180,000 gallons of potable water, which is great. Potable water, 180,000 gallons. So they kind of split it in half. They only need about half of the tank to launch, and then they only need about half of the tank to recover. And most of the water is vaporized by engines or contained in the on-site features. And that makes sense. The rocket's going to absorb most of the water. Streaky says, I mean, you could test the water and see if there's a real problem. Yes. Yes. Jim is saying if they moved 20 or 30 miles away to Matamoros in Mexico, they could just toxic waste out on the ground or in the rivers. Yeah, but if they moved out of the country, they would lose all their DoD contracts. SpaceX has a lot of money, not only through NASA, but the DoD. There's a lot of involvement there. That's one of the reasons why Elon's limited how SpaceX can hire non-Americans. You need the proper visas and permits because they do rocket technology with the government. And that's a protected, secured thing. Yes, you make money, you get a lawsuit, Puffer. That is correct. That is correct. That is correct. You make money, you get a lawsuit. Maddie's saying ITAR. Oh no, this is even worse than ITAR. Rocketry is a specialized thing. Yeah, the DoD controls the rocket tech. Yep. And Nero, that's my point. They couldn't go to Mexico because they do work for the DoD. The DoD is not going to let them operate outside the United States. Hold on here. Where was it? Harville Warbler says, can your cousin from Hamas get a job there? No, sorry. Sorry. Yes, it turns out you could put big warheads on a rocket. Oh. You can't be hiring any Germans when you build rockets. Wait. Yes. Yes. And Nero, you're correct. Basically, SpaceX is building intercontinental ballistic missiles. And they're building massive intercontinental ballistic missiles. Because the intercontinental, like a nuclear missile that you would use for launch, is a... Let me see here. So... you know, they are not that. I mean, like they're big missiles, but they're not that. They're not like what you think, chat. Not exactly. Let me see if I can find the stats for these. One we could use right now. So for example, there's the Minuteman III. That's currently what the United States uses. What are the specs on it? So the Minuteman III, chat, is 18.3 meters tall and long. All right. It's 18.3 meters tall. It's 1/5. Or actually, hold on. No, it's 1/6 of the size of the height of the SpaceX rocket. Remember, chat, this is the SpaceX rocket right here at 20 meters. A Minuteman III nuclear missile is like this tall right there. Could destroy the world. A bunch of those. Think about it. You need 6 of them. You would need 6 of these stacked up on end. You need 6 of them to be as tall. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You need 6 of those to be as tall as the rocket. They're not very big. They're not very big, but these are massive. You know, and at its widest point, it's 5 feet wide. A Minuteman missile. Look how wide, look how big these things are. compared to them. So, yeah, these are massive in scope, chat. They're massive in scope. How many cans of Diet Coke is that? I don't know. More cans of Diet Coke than Trump could drink in a day. So, the Minuteman is fake as space, and that's pretty real. Yes, you could literally put like a ton of warheads. You could put a ton of warheads on the SpaceX rocket. That'd be kind of funny. That would be some like Moonraker level stuff. Anyways, guys, we're going to get back to this suit here real quick. We're going to finish this up. So they say on each occasion, the system has been used mostly recently for static testing. And SpaceX sampled the deluged water and it analyzed it by a certified lab and sent the results to the Texas environmental quality people. And on each occasion, the water system fully complied with the Texas discharge permits limits and the agreed orders that they have. So they're doing everything they're supposed to do. They're already doing everything they have to do here, chat. And they're like, what more can we do? We're testing it. These people won't leave us the fuck alone. You know, we're trying to get our stuff done right. And I went the wrong way here. So basically they're saying, we're doing everything you want. You want us to take care of it. You sent us a letter. And that's what SpaceX did. SpaceX got served with this letter and they're like, what the fuck are we not? What? So they went out and they fired a rocket. They tested the water. They took a big sample, sent it out for testing, and they sent the stuff to Texas, to the Texas EPA, and said, "Look, you gave us a discharge permit. We're within the bounds of it." And yeah, the Texas people are like, "Yeah, this is good. There's nothing wrong." They're doing everything they have to do. Oh, Brooks, it's 978 cans tall. Oh my God, you guys are awful. So, the booster has 33 motors. Yes, it does. Aniodine says, white men can all dunk at space. We'll be unstoppable. I know, even me. Even me. Angela says, how many $2 cans is that? Oh, God. So the Falcon 9 is 9 engines, yes. A little NG says, people really think a multi-billion-dollar company with billion-dollar defense contracts isn't going to do everything by the book? You realize how often multi-billion-dollar companies get in trouble? They do a lot. So the idea of them not doing something by the book isn't a surprise, but for something this bad, yeah, they would definitely make sure this is in order. I agree on this spot, but they do a lot of things. Other companies will mess up a lot. Now, they talk about the Texas, the general purpose discharging permit, the agreed order, and the EPA consent agreement. So the MSGP authorizes discharges from emergency firefighting activities and then uncontaminated water from dust suppression and discharges from potable water sources. The deluge water falls into each of these authorized categories. The water prevents fire emergencies by suppressing flames from the rocket. The water suppresses dust that would be dispersed. And the system also uses only uncontaminated potable water. So another requirement is to identify the outfalls associated with the deluge system, the locations at or near which the water will be discharged into the adjacent wetlands. So you have to identify them. And Texas and SpaceX, they went ahead and did. They went ahead and did this. And they identified a couple different outfalls, 3, 4, 5, 10, and 11 as the pertinent outfalls for approved non-stormwater discharge when they use the deluge system. So the water exits the SpaceX facility at or near these outfalls. SpaceX samples the water from a location near outfall 10, which is approximately 20 to 30 feet from the launch pad. SpaceX has also assured that it was properly managing deluge water discharges under their discharging permits. Additionally, SpaceX reported its sampling to the Texas EPA after each deployment of the system. SpaceX has provided the Texas EPA with spreadsheets showing each of those samples are well within the effluent limits for their discharge permit. And then in August, the EPA says the Texas EPA tells SpaceX it received at least one complaint from a member of the public. For the first time, the Texas EPA seemed to change its mind and now wanted to characterize the deluge water as industrial wastewater. The Texas EPA recommended that SpaceX take corrective action by submitting an individual TPDES permit for the deluge system. So remember, chat, if there weren't any issues and it wasn't required, they had a general discharging permit and they were fine. But now they have to get the EPA equivalent permits. So to resolve this, SpaceX and them agreed to an agreed order. They negotiated it. The agreed order, as mandated by law, states that SpaceX does not admit to violating the Clean Water Act, and SpaceX denies all allegations. And they say SpaceX generally denies each allegation. And they say the occurrence of any violation is in dispute, and the entry of this order shall not constitute an admission of any violation. The agreed order also said SpaceX has voluntarily submitted administratively complete permit applications, that the Texas EPA conducted a technical review and determined that the use of the system doesn't cause risk to the environment, that SpaceX can continue to use the system so long as they continue to sample the water and make the sample results available. And they say, and this is interesting, the way they do this, bolded and underlined, importantly, they point out SpaceX may continue to operate the deluge system so long as SpaceX complies with the agreed order. And that's important. The government is, we talk about this all the time, chat. Governments you can be induced to cooperate. Well, the government says we will not enforce action against you as long as you stay within the bounds. Well, there you go. That's been established. They are agreeing to stay within the bounds. And they have a letter from the Texas EPA's person saying, yes, so long as SpaceX follows the ordering provisions of the agreed order, the Texas EPA will consider SpaceX to be in compliance with the agreed order for any future discharges. And they say SpaceX has been complying with the agreed order in all ways. And they say they sample all the water. They proceeded with the application. And they made those sample results available for review by the Texas EPA. And they say the agreed order will be finalized shortly. Now, remember, this thing is being worked on currently because, remember, at the start of August, in August, this happened, and SpaceX is working on it now. I mean, guys, think about it. It's only been, all of August, all of September, all of October, all of November. Could do environmental compliance on a massive scale like this, it took time. But within 120 days, they're fixing it. So also what happened? Well, SpaceX also then turned around and negotiated with the EPA a consent agreement that was finalized on September 5th. And just like the Texas EPA order, SpaceX and the EPA agreed that SpaceX would pay a civil penalty of $150,000. Oh no, chat! I don't think Elon can take that kind of hit. $150,000. 150,000 bands. I mean, it's not like it's 150,000 sticks, like 150,000 million, or 150 million, 150 billion. $150,000. And they say without any admission of wrongdoing. And they say the EPA has confirmed the consent agreement and SpaceX application for the Texas permit closes out the EPA's enforcement matter. So they say the materials you have submitted to the EPA have been determined to have satisfactorily met the requirements. So, and this order is hereby closed. So they've done everything they have to do. And they've been subjected to additional environmental review. There's been thoroughly disclosed, studied, and found by multiple agencies not to present environmental effects. So the FAA first evaluated it. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers evaluated it. The U.S. Coast Guard, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the National Park Service, and NASA served as cooperating agencies on the environmental assessments to be done. And they cooperated on it. The PA evaluated impacts of the deluge system that would use 350,000 gallons of water, even though SpaceX is currently not using this much water. And they concluded the deluge system, if used, would not significantly impact surface water quality, groundwater quality, or the floodplain function. So the FAA again reevaluated the environmental impacts because remember, you're launching stuff into the sky. The FAA is involved. You have to work with the FAA to make sure you have cleared airspace around there because you don't want airliners flying over and then you have to time it right. No, they worked with the FAA to make sure that there's nobody is routinely going to fly through the area. And then eventually the FAA did a written reevaluation. They said it is not expected the water will contain any pollutants during future operations. The FAA also found the water discharges could not impact biological resources. And they explained the amount of water that would leave the launch pad site as overflow, as the overland sheet flow push out, or condensation is comparable to slightly increased rainfall. And then the FAA noted that an average summertime thunderstorm there would deposit more water over the landscape than any single or all combined activations of the deluge system. And then because of the increased water, the risk of vegetation creep into the mudflat habitat is low. Now you're thinking, well, wait, is it a bad thing that the vegetation would creep into a mudflat? Well, at times, you can have issues there with if you want a mud environment and a habitat for animals that thrive in muddy areas. That could be a problem. It could be an issue. A very good example of this would be something that's not exactly a vegetation creep, but an algae bloom. Well, algae sounds good. A lot of animals eat it. Yes, but you can also suffocate things in an algae bloom. For mud sharks and such. No, we're not doing that. We're not going there, chat. Oh. He's also supplying water to drought. Well, remember, he's already at... Remember, chat, this isn't really supplying water to... This is at the end of we're at the Gulf of Mexico, so this is already a marshland. So and remember, this is the Rio Grande right here. This is all the Rio Grande River right here. So you're not really... This is already environmentally going to be a pretty moist area. You're not really making it more moist. The mud shark, the sad recurring thing that never is. Maddie B says, "Is this what you did when working for the oil companies?" No, I actually did other stuff. But we were involved. I got to learn how to do a lot of cool shit when I worked for the oil companies. It was a lot of fun, though. It was a lot of fun. Although very quickly, the job didn't last forever because the Saudis destroyed the fracking market. So we could talk about that another day. We could talk about fracking and how, like in Ohio, it's the Wild West still another day. But they also talk about not only the FAA, but the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service reviewed the effects pursuant to the Endangered Species Act. And the Fish and Wildlife Service found the operation of the deluge system could cause flushing and avoidance behavior that could decrease the risk of harm to species during launches. The service found that the deluge system could also have the beneficial effect to listed species by dampening the noise and vibrations from the launch operations, thus reducing stress that wildlife may experience during the launch. Can't have the snails getting stressed out, chat. Although, remember, chat, remember, if the wood flat snail is having stress and its stress level is here, we need to be able to make it we need to give it that ability to take on much more stress. There is something we can do about that. There's a company, a small law firm out of central Minnesota that could probably help us with it to help take care of that. There are some things that deal with that. I'm just saying. I believe salt cures snail stress. Not just salt. It's a different salt. But yes, kind of close. Pretty close, Chad. Pretty close. But anyways, they talk about all these things that have happened. SpaceX agreed to monitor the system closely and report it to the FAA and the Fish and Wildlife Service after every use. And they say, there have been no significant environmental impacts. And it's well within the limitations by Texas and the agreed orders. And they point out here are the issues. On June 4th, the plaintiffs sent SpaceX a notice for violations of this and for failure to obtain a permit under the TPDES. On July 3rd, SpaceX responded to provide additional information, correct misunderstandings, and invite plaintiff to meet and share information about the deluge system. For example, SpaceX explained that water is not evaporated or captured in SpaceX containment basins, is dispersed within 20 to 30 feet of the launch pad, not a half a mile. And that local waterways and aquatic resources were not being harmed. SpaceX also offered to meet with plaintiff to discuss the system and seek a resolution. The plaintiff declined. Under the Clean Water Act, their first available date was August 3rd. Now, that's interesting. Obviously, this is SpaceX saying it. But they're like, look, we'll show you. Like, here, come on. We'll talk about this. I'm sure with SpaceX, if they would have asked, like, here's how this works. Come watch us run it. And look, you can see where all the manholes are and all the drains and grates. Here's where all the grates empty out. I'm sure SpaceX, if it had come to it, would have said, yes, the plaintiff wants a payout. But I guarantee you, if these people had asked for it, SpaceX, sure, come collect your own samples. Come over here when we launch. We'll take you over when our guy does it. We'll take samples at the same time from the same water source and go test your samples. I'm sure SpaceX would have been all about that. Yes, this injunction is intended to shut them down forever. Yep. But SpaceX, you can see, and guys, this is where I've done this before when you have clients, and this is the same even in a divorce. It's one thing to say "fuck off, commies," but instead, when this happens, if you're like, "Look, hey man, we got off on the wrong foot. We're all on the same team, bro. Let's work together." They've gone out of their way to be the nice guy. And they have documented proof of that. So they've gone out of their way to do everything they can. Guess what? You look like the reasonable guy in court. So SpaceX doing this is a brilliant thing because they know at the end of the day, this is a shakedown. This is just meant to screw them over. And that way these people can get money, but also SpaceX can be stopped. And is this meant to punish them because of Elon? Maybe. Is it also just because they're environmental scumbags? Possibly. Who really knows? We don't know their full motives. But they've done everything they can to take the wind out of their sails. And it's not a bad tactic at times. There are times where being the nicest guy and being overly nice gives you style points and image points in court, because you're like, look, judge, we're willing to do everything they wanted to do. They wanted to come monitor it, we'd let them come monitor it. I mean, the idea you need to file a Clean Water Act action at that point, the judge turns around and looks at him and goes, they offered to let you do what everything you normally want to do. Why aren't you taking advantage of it? So, oh, we're getting more snow again. Huh. Oh, by the way, chat, we only got like 3 inches of snow last night, not like a million. Our weathermen lied to us. But then they point out after SpaceX did this, 16 days later, 2 weeks later, there was a new notice that changed the theory of the alleged violations. The plaintiffs now argue that SpaceX had failed to obtain an individual permit. And they argue the discharges from the system are not eligible under their MSGP permit. So under the Clean Water Act, the first available date to file suit is September 17th. So notice, and this is where once again once again show you guys. Once again, this shows you, and as I think you guys were already summarizing, this is all just a shakedown. This is all nonsense. This is all disingenuous and in bad faith. Because what do we see? And immediately with SpaceX, like, hey, buddy, come on. Hey, look, we're cool. We'll help you take a look. We're all on the same team here. Hold on one second. What? Well, apparently Clyde rolled around the snow and is like running all over the place. So SpaceX went ahead and said, hey, man, we'll let you hang out with us and we'll fix this. But as soon as they did that, the environmentalists come back and say, no, you messed up over here instead. SpaceX is like, what the fuck? So that's the problem here. That's where you can see this is going on. Brittany says, when did this get filed? Over the summer, this past summer. This all just started over the summer. So basically starting in June. So in October, the plaintiffs, and once again, the hippies, and notified SpaceX that they intended to seek emergency relief to halt all use of the deluge system until SpaceX obtained their permits or until an injunction could be briefed and decided. SpaceX informed the plaintiff of the Texas EPA and the federal EPA's enforcement orders rendered after notice letters, and there was no enforcement interest left for the plaintiffs to vindicate. Now remember, chat, even the environmentalists admit there are limits to when you can do stuff. And if everybody else involved has actually made a decision and there are consent agreements, well, there has been an enforcement action technically. Now, they get onto the legal standard, and for an injunction, there is a specific legal standard you have to show. And you have to show for an injunction or a temporary restraining order, a TRO, that it's likely to succeed on the merits, that you're likely to suffer irreparable harm in the absence of the injunction, that the balance of equities tip in favor of the environmentalist, and that the injunction is in the public interest. It's a 4-part test. So basically, no matter who you are, if you're filing an injunction, you have to show you can succeed on the merits. You're likely, not you're guaranteed, but it's likely that if you don't get this injunction, you're going to suffer irreparable harm. So in a civil case, in a civil setting, you might be facing a situation where, like, for example, in somebody's estate and someone has died. Well, you're trying to stop the executor from doing something. He might spend all the money. Well, that money's gone. You can't ever get it back. It's an irreparable harm. And that the balance of equities tip in your favor. And that ultimately it's in the public interest. You have these 4 parts. And yes, in this situation here, it's in the public interest that we make sure that the SpaceX is not doing something wrong. Okay, great. But is it true they're going to succeed on the merits? No, because there's questions about whether or not SpaceX already complied. Is it going to suffer irreparable harm? That's not clear. And does the balance of equities tip in their favor? No. So they've really only got 1 point. Like, yes, we should err on the side of caution, but that's not enough. And the plaintiff bears the burden of persuasion on all 4 elements, and a failure on any one of them warrants denial. And that's true. You have to win all 4. You have to win all 4 of them. If you fail on one of them, you lose. And in this case, I would argue they lose on 3 of the 4. So the argument is they point out SpaceX likely to succeed. And they say that while the plaintiff not need to prove they're entitled to summary judgment, they must at minimum raise questions about what's going on here. And so far, they say they can't clear that hurdle. And they point out the system discharges are permitted under the Texas permits that they have. That they fall within the 3 categories of non-stormwater discharge, and they discharge through approved outfalls. And remember, like they said, they do it for emergency firefighting, dust suppression, and it's water from a potable water source. Remember, potable water is drinking water. So you could go up to one of those tanks right now and shove a ladle in there and pull out a ladle full of water and drink it, and you would be safe. That water is treated. It's safe water to use. You could turn on the pipes. Like when that water's all come out of the ground, that water should still be safe enough for you to drink. Now, you wouldn't want to be underneath it when the rocket's going up, but if you could stand there with a bucket, you could take a bucket of water and drink the water. It's probably safer than the water in Mexico. Yes, the group is called the Save the Rio Grande Valley. So the plaintiff is Cash, yeah. Embalmed is saying, so is Boeing paying for the lawyers? Yeah. Yeah, Jeff Bezos and Blue Origin are paying for this. Blue Origin is Jeff Bezos' program. There's also Global ATK. They're involved. There's all kinds of groups involved in this that are going forward. Maybe it's also being done by the people who run Vostochny out in Russia. Benjamin Lewis says, who is the plaintiff? It is the Save the Rio Grande Valley. It's an environmental group. And they're in charge. They want to advocate for saving the Rio Grande Valley. Is this technically a watermark issue? I mean, kind of. Kind of. Now, they also point out that they are doing everything that occurs. Discharges that may occur during normal operation of an industrial facility or a commercial facility do not require additional permit coverage. And they talk about the firefighting duties. The firefighting duties are clear that you're allowed to do that in emergency response involving fire protection or prevention. They don't want to light the launch system on fire anymore. The deluge water is used to reduce the fires caused by the thrust of the Starship and super heavy engines. And they say that both the FAA and the Fish and Wildlife Service also stated in their reviews of the deluge system that the primary purpose is fire mitigation. It's a fire prevention tactic and minimize the risk of fires igniting or spreading through the vegetated areas. And remember, chat, we talked about this and we'll go back to this real quick. This is the rocket taking off again. This is all of that marshland. It caused a 4-acre wildfire. And it's because they weren't containing all this exhaust. In addition to the rocket pad being destroyed, they had to protect the area around it, and they weren't able to. So now this actually protects the area. There's usually a deluge after I thrust. Maddie B says, actually, it's called Fire X. Job well done says it's a lot of discharge. That's the rocket system before they started doing this. This is what the rocket system is meant to prevent, this type of destruction. Job well done says, yes, this is the original one when it was exhaust and exploding concrete. And if you guys are new or you hadn't been here earlier, we do have footage of what it looks like when the suppression system runs. Hold on here. Oh, where'd it go? Oh, here we go. We're all set here. All right, this is again the actual things here. So this is on the rocket pad, and this is what it does. And that's 180,000 gallons flying through all at once. And you can see here again, this is in slow motion. And that's what it does. It's meant to stop the fires. It's meant to stop the fires. So I want to see it in person. Oh, I bet it's a lot of fun in person. You know, second, they talk about its dust suppression. And dust suppression is very important. And they talk about it's all water purchased from the Brownsville Public Utility Board. And it's drinkable water. It's potable water. You can, like I said, you can literally drink it. It's in clean tanks, and it's pumped to the system via clean pipes. No chemicals are added to the water. This uncontaminated water is also used for dust and debris suppression. And they point out that both the FAA and the Federal Fish and Wildlife Service, the deluge system prevents the breakup of the launch pad and the creation of a dust and debris cloud. And remember, guys, this is a massive dust and debris cloud that's going to fucking, like, you're trying to protect the marshlands. Guess what the marshes don't need? A big cloud of dust rolling over it that muddy up the water and suffocate and injure animals. Guess what you don't want? This. You also don't want chunks of concrete flying around and killing animals or polluting areas. So, yes, SpaceX is doing the right thing. So there was a reason for it. And they say, finally, and then finally, they talk about the final thing is there's no industrial process prior to discharge. There's no industrial process. And SpaceX reports and continues to report these launches to the Texas EPA along with test samples. There's nothing added to the water. There's nothing changing in the water. The water is also discharged in accordance with the rules. And we already talked about all these outfalls that they use every time. We've gone through those. They routinely do this. And the Texas discharge permit clearly covers water discharged by the operation of the deluge system, and they can show the plaintiff can't succeed. And they say that even if Texas discharge permits don't apply, the plaintiffs have already been addressed by the EPA orders. And they point out that the Texas EPA sent a notice of violation and recommended that SpaceX fix the problem and submit a permit application for the water system. So SpaceX did. And SpaceX did. And they said SpaceX can continue, as part of its agreed order, to operate as long as they continue to sample the water and make those samples available. And they said, although the Texas order is not final yet, SpaceX is already in compliance. And they say it's always been with the Texas EPA requirements. and every scheduled launch is authorized and not in violation. And then they go on to talk about the EPA consent agreement with the federal EPA that was finalized in September. And as a result, SpaceX paid a substantial, and I love how they're like, it's a substantial civil penalty of nearly $150,000 to the EPA. It's a substantial fine, chat. You know, that's the funny part. Like, you know, what's SpaceX's capitalization? Like, how much is SpaceX worth? Like, SpaceX right now is worth $210 billion. Yes. SpaceX is the second largest corporation in the world, chat, right now. And I didn't know this. This is very interesting. SpaceX is currently worth $210 billion. It's the second most valuable private company, only behind the owner of TikTok, which is a valuation of $225 billion. Interesting. Interesting. Now, KJ saying, if you can repair it with money, is it irreparable? Well, when you think about it, it's not that, it's the damage to the river. For all the people who are going to use the Rio Grande River, use all the marshes, they're arguing that harm's irreparable. So, but yes, $150,000 fine. That's still it's a big fine from the EPA. But they agreed it would resolve any accusation SpaceX had discharged the water without a permit for 2 years. And they say critically, the EPA has confirmed the consent agreement, including the penalty in SpaceX application for a Texas permit, closes out the enforcement matter. So they're done. And they say there's no harm existing, and the harms have already been addressed by the appropriate entities, the state and federal agencies. So they point out there's nothing you could do. And they say that the expert agencies address the usage of the system, sought and received civil payment penalties, and they authorized prior and further use. So they've got the permits. They addressed what do we need to fix it. They paid their penalties, and they got the permits. They're done. They're done. Now, they point out because the plaintiff filed its suit more than 120 days after sending the initial notice, the diligent prosecution bar applies. Now, here, and this is something, hold on here. What is that? What did they say here? It's B or G6B. Hold on here. We're going to bring that up. We're going to bring that up. Where did it just go, chat? Wait, why did that not show up the right way? 1319. Oh, that's why I messed up. Hold on here. So what we're going to do is we're going to move to the administrative penalties part of the Clean Water Act. You know, and this is the enforcement of the Clean Water Act, chat. So what does it do? Well, you got to get all the way down to Part G. And you have enforcement penalties. So you have violations. So you need to move down to Part 6. The effect of the order. And what's Part B? The applicability of limitation with respect to citizen suits. So With civil suits, the limitations contained in subparagraph A and civil penalties shall not apply with respect to any violation which the civil action has been filed prior to the commencement. And we already talked about this. If you file before the EPA files, your action is still survives. The notice of the alleged violation has been given in accordance with the other sections prior to commencement, and this action is filed before the 120th day after which notice is given. So here, you have to do it within 120 days. So it's with respect to such allegation, the alleged violation is filed before the 120th day after on which notice is given. So you have to file your suit within 120 days. So Adam says 121, too bad, get wrecked. Hey, the rules are the rules. 121 is not 120. Too bad, so sad. So that's why SpaceX is talking about the diligent prosecution bar. Okay, so specifically, the initial notice letter was served June 4th, meaning to avoid this bar, plaintiff was required to file suit by October 2nd. Plaintiff failed to do so. The second letter does not cure this deficiency because it changed the fundamental theory and engaged in informal enforcement proceedings. And they say because both the EPA and the Texas EPA have already commenced actions, the complaint has no merit and the state cannot, the plaintiff can't state a viable claim for relief. Now, what's the irreparable harm? Well, the irreparable harm is always the basis for injunctive relief. So where is the irreparable harm? The injury must be not speculative nor remote, but actual and imminent. It's more than an unfounded fear. The injury must be permanent or long in duration and can't be redressed by either an inequitable or legal remedy following trial. So you have to show real harm. You have to show the harm. What is the harm? Well, they say a delay in seeking injunctive relief weighs heavily against finding the irreparable injury. And that's part of the issue. The longer you wait to file your action, the less likely it's considered you were important. Well, if this was such a big deal, why'd you screw around? If it was such a big deal, you should have got it done. Why didn't you get it done? And they say delay in seeking remedy is an important factor. Absent a good explanation, a period of delay militates against the issuance of an injunction because there is no apparent urgency to request the injunction. Courts have denied relief based on delays of weeks or months. And there better be a good explanation. There is no good explanation for their delay. SpaceX first did this 11 months ago in November 2023. And yet the plaintiff waited 8 months until June to notify SpaceX that it intended to sue on the newly manufactured theory that required an individual permit. There was no emergency harm that would occur. And more importantly, and this is where if I was in the meantime, they didn't come running in with, look, we see elevated levels of thallium and heavy metal concentrations in the water. There's been none of that. This is just a speculative harm. Well, they must be doing something bad to the water because my rocket engine bad. Elon Musk is bad. And that's part of the problem here. There's no reparable harm. There's but they point out the fact is the water is not captured in retention ponds, but it's discharged onto the ground 20, 30 feet away. No waterways or water life are being effective. There's nothing to show that it causes environmental harm. And SpaceX can continue using the system so long as they comply with the testing. There's no independent proof the use of the water system is irreparable to harm the waterways. In fact, The plaintiff's alleged harms occur on land opposite of SpaceX's facility from where the deluge system is used. And it's just speculation built on speculation. And if we go back to the map, when we talk, look, guys, here is the launch site. And where does it go? Look how far away they think it's going to go. All the way down to the river. No, it comes out here. The water comes out over here. And the water goes boop right there. It does not go all the way down to them. Because this is not where the water discharge is at. So it's outside of where they think the harm is going to be. And they say to the contrary, the environmental reviews have shown the deluge system could cause flushing and avoidance behavior that could decrease the risk of harm to species during the launches. And they talk about the Fish and Wildlife Service being involved, and they said this doesn't affect the endangered species in the area. This is actually better. And they say, moreover, the samples submitted show that the measured concentrations were within the Texas EPA's limits. There's no concrete evidence showing the launches will cause an alleged injury. Now, they argue that SpaceX trying to get an individual permit is insufficient. So the plaintiffs don't explain how any... Sorry here, chat. We'll explain this. The procedural injuries, the fact that SpaceX might not have had a permit, how did that hurt anything? Well, the plaintiffs don't explain how any of the substantial harms would have been prevented if SpaceX had obtained an individual permit. Well, if they got the permit, you'd still be complaining about the water going in there. And yes, even when SpaceX obtains the permit, the plaintiffs can't point to any evidence SpaceX would have to take any additional measures in operating the water system. Literally nothing has changed. So they're pointing out it doesn't change anything. And that's a very big point. Them getting licensed and permitted doesn't change anything. Robert says if they had asked for a permit beforehand, they probably would have been denied. No, I kind of get the feeling when they talk to the Texas EPA is like, you guys don't need a permit. Remember what they said. You don't need a permit. Everything you're doing is okay. You're in compliance with Law A. Therefore, you don't need a permit. So I don't think they needed one anyway. And they point out the balance of equities. It denies it. So the competing claims of injury and the effect on each party granting or withholding the relief. And they say the injunctive relief would allow SpaceX to continue with the Super Heavy program. If the injunction is granted, SpaceX is dead. SpaceX has to find another place to launch rockets. So what are they going to do? They point out even if the plaintiffs were correct, and needing a different permit is essentially a non-substantive procedural injury, there are no protective measures that an individual permit would require SpaceX that's not already implementing in accordance with the Texas discharge permits, the Texas EPA order, and other approvals by the FAA, the Fish and Wildlife Service, and the EPA. And remember, the discharged water is potable drinking water from the Brownsville Water Board. So there is no credible possibility of harm to the plaintiff, the public health, or the environment if their injunction is denied. On the other hand, this would cause significant economic harm to SpaceX that would have consequences for national security interest. There are a lot of problems here if SpaceX gets screwed. The United States Air Force awarded SpaceX a contract to demonstrate a self-sustaining rocket cargo transportation service. It's a strategic investment by the Air Force. And it will accumulate in an orbital launch and landing of 30 metric tons of government-provided cargo using the Super Heavy. Over $150 million in payments are tied to this development. And performance milestones. They talk about a 2 to 8 month grounding of tests and launches would delay tens of millions of dollars in revenue in this rocket cargo contract. And it's a military initiative. More importantly, our military needs this done. The military can't wait. The military can't wait. If not dismissed, this would cause economic and competitive harms to SpaceX by delaying deployment of the Starlink-based satellite internet service. Remember, chat, Starlink is run by SpaceX, and they require maintenance of satellites and keep going. You're going to hurt the entire world, not just the U.S. military, but now Starlink. Millions of people around the world depend on Starlink. Includes communities struck by disasters, and that is very true. Down in North Carolina, Starlink became critical. And apparently now I've seen more and more people are talking about, like, if you could afford a disaster prep, you buy Starlink, activate it, and then just put it away. And then when it's time, you can turn it on, it's ready to go, and you can then transmit. There's additional demand for Starlink services. And SpaceX is actively engaged in launching satellites into orbit to achieve high-quality internet. And through the SpaceX Starship program, the satellites will provide national security satellite capabilities to the DoD and the intelligence community. So not only is it just Starlink, but there's military contracts, defense capabilities. There's all kinds of stuff that happens. And because the Starlink satellites use the Super Heavy rockets, a delay would cause a day-for-day delay of SpaceX's ability to enhance Starlink and Starshield. This would prevent Starlink from acquiring more customers sooner, hinders Starlink's ability to serve hundreds of thousands of would-be customers, and harms SpaceX's competitive advantages. They are clearly significant harms that are at risk here. SpaceX has already invested billions of dollars in the Starbase facility and the Super Heavy. I mean, if they can't do it, chat, SpaceX is now this entire facility here. This entire facility they can't use it. It's worthless. And if they can't use that one, down here, the Starbase production facility, where they're actually building everything, guess what? Can't use this anymore. This entire area is a complete waste of money because it doesn't work anymore. Each day SpaceX is unable to perform will cost SpaceX millions of dollars and delay realization of returns on capital investments, none of which would be recoverable from the plaintiff. That's also the issue here. If SpaceX were to get stopped and then it turns out, they were wrong, the plaintiffs were wrong the entire time, the hippies were wrong, the Rio Grande Valley protection hippies were wrong, SpaceX would not be able to sue them. Turns out they're just lying. SpaceX would not be able to get that money back from them. These people, they have no money like that. That money's gone. It was never there. There are times when you do post an injunction, you may offer to post a bond. Saying, look, I'm offering up money that, I'm putting my money where my mouth is. If I'm wrong, this money could be used as assess cost and help provide protection for the party. Well, the hippies haven't done that. There's nothing that does this. There's personnel cost. There's over 2,000 people at Starbase each day, including the specialist. There's corporate staff workers. And depending on the length of delay, SpaceX would have to continue paying them. but without significant work for them to do, or lay them off. And remember, they're not a charity. They can't do that. And overall, the cost of maintaining Starbase and the Super Heavy program is $4 million per day. That just means if they're all sitting around, it costs $4 million a day baseline expenditures. And without anything going on, SpaceX is spending $4 million a day with little to no return. Launching is needed to continue the program success. This isn't like at the very beginning where they could turn around and start like, oh, we can go back to the drawing board. We can work on stuff in the labs. We can work on basic engineering again. No, they're to the point where it's game time. This could hurt those astronauts who are being rescued. Yeah. Nobody else is going to be able to get to them. Exactly, Yamal. Why did I just not go over? Oh, I see what I knocked over. So they say, second, every day that super heavy launches cannot occur. SpaceX receipt of billions of dollars of revenue under contracts that it has to meet. For each $1 billion delayed using the recent 3-month treasury rate of 4.6%, that's a loss of over $100,000 per day. Further delay in operations will result in the delay or even cancellation of the second human lunar landing contract agreed to by NASA and SpaceX in November of 2022, which is worth $1.15 billion. So it's not only like, okay, fine, yeah, you're little fucking retarded snails, people, but it's the moon that we're talking about. So there's so many time-sensitive missions and projects of national importance, we have to get it done. And what's this being weighed in conjunction with? Time-sensitive missions, going to the moon, protecting America. Well, the plaintiff's unspecified and improbable environmental harms from unpermitted discharges of water are problematic. Now, they point out the public interest also favors denying the injunctions. Why? The FAA and NASA have repeatedly recognized these serve critical national interest. These are critical national interest. SpaceX is providing greater mission capability to NASA, the DoD, and commercial customers. That space transportation costs get reduced to make continued exploration, development, and use of space more affordable. There's a lot on the line here. These guys will destroy our birthright. Man's birthright is among the stars. The stars are humanity's birthright, to quote the Emperor of Mankind. It's our birthright, chat, to go to Mars. It's for us to expand out across the universe. Well, these hippies down in Texas are going to fuck that all up. They put out specifically NASA selected the Super Heavy to bring the first true astronauts to the moon on the Artemis 3 mission, which will mark humanity's first return to the lunar surface in more than 50 years. Assuming the Chinese I love this. I love how this is worded here. I love how this is worded. I some lawyers there, it's like, assuming the goddamn Chi-Coms don't get there first. I love that. That is so funny. They also point out SpaceX is scheduled the fifth orbital launch in October 13th of 2024. And now we're trying to meet the Artemis program's aggressive schedule. And chat, I have to go to the bathroom. Give me 1 second. I will be right back here. Hold on. All right, chat. Sorry, we're back. But yes, the Chinese really are trying to go to the moon. That's not a joke. That is a real thing. And if you guys were not aware, NASA does want to land men on the moon by 2026. Like, that's not a joke. That's a real thing. That is 100% a goal of NASA. But delaying this would cause a problem there, which would be a major harm to the nation's policy goals. So, because of that, they want this killed. And they're asking for it to go away. And this past the 21st, we got an order. We got an order from the court. And I don't know why. Oh, hold on here. I know why it's not. Oh, why is that there? Oh, gotta get rid of it. There we go. We have an order from the court. And yes, I would also just point out, chat, isn't it funny? You know, what else happened in June of this year? Elon Musk started getting very vocal for the president. So isn't it kind of interesting how that worked out? I'm just saying. I'm just saying. So they say before the court are a couple things. The plaintiff's motion for a temporary restraining order, the defendant's amended opposition to the preliminary injunction and restraining order, the plaintiff's reply to the amended opposition for an injunction, and then finally, there's a fourth one. The defendant's reply and further response to the motion for a temporary restraining order. So this goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Normally, you get there's once the plaintiffs respond, the defendants respond, the plaintiffs respond again. The defendants don't normally get to respond again, but they got away with it. For reasons below, docket number 5 is denied, plaintiff's motion. And if we go back, the motion for preliminary injunction is denied. So they get through the background here, and the court adopts a couple of different things from the plaintiff's response. Or, I'm sorry, defendant's response. The court adopts the exhibits provided in the defendant's original response. And that's pretty impressive. Meaning they're like, we accept everything they filed. And what's document number 8, chat? It's the one we just read. There's a reason why I selected this for us to read. It's very important. It's very important. It's very, very important. It's very critical. Very critical. So, they point out that at the beginning, it became evident the deluge system was necessary to protect the launch site and surrounding areas during launches. Let's say the launch system sprays quantities of potable water at the base. Sorry, excuse me, chat. And it prevents fires, reduces dust and debris, and it protects the launch pad. And because of these dangers, it can't do it without the water system. And notice how it already starts. in good faith attempts to use its system in compliance with the Clean Water Act. This should already tell you to start off with how the court's looking at this. Look, remember what I told you, chat. SpaceX is being seen in good faith. Notice the court's not saying these guys are acting like assholes. They're saying in good faith already. Defendant obtained their multi-sector general permit, and this is their general permit from the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. Remember, the Texas EPA. And they visited defendant's property where they explained the system, demonstrated it, and then walked the site. They raised no concerns the system failed to meet necessary standards and issued the general permit. So, SpaceX began to use the system. The Texas EPA realized later on it did not apply to the discharge activity and began to work with SpaceX to fix it. Accordingly, they applied for the TPDES, the Texas Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit, and entered the agreed order with the Texas EPA. So first, they had to pay a significant civil penalty, and second, there was a technical review of the permit application, and they determined the water system does not cause risk to the environment. And third, there were new reporting requirements for SpaceX. And then finally, SpaceX was permitted to continue using the system pending approval. Now, notice how that's being phrased. Basically, the court is using the language of SpaceX. That's not a good sign for the plaintiffs. This is a very good sign for SpaceX. So this is already looking good when you're reading this. And obviously by the title, the SpaceX won, but we'll get to it. So there's a preliminary injunction, and they talk about the standards, the likelihood of success. There's a threat of irreparable injury. The injury, if the injunction is denied, outweighs any harm that would result if the injunction is granted, meaning the harm to the plaintiff is greater than the harm to the defendant. And the injunction will not disservice the public interest. Those are, again, the four parts. So the temporary restraining order, the issue is moot, and he cites a footnote. And he says, the court assumes the plaintiff moved for a temporary restraining order to stop the October 13th launch. Well, yeah, and it's gone. That already went and passed, and it didn't happen. So SpaceX launched. And the plaintiff's likelihood of success depends on a future act. The defendant's ability to obtain the correct governmental permit. But they fail to show a substantial threat of irreparable injury that outweighs the harm that will result if the injunction is granted. And they say, therefore, the injunction is not a proper remedy. And they say, under the Clean Water Act, you have to get the pollution discharge elimination system permits. And they say the permit is implemented in Texas through its EPA. So, additionally, discharge does not comply with the issued permits, violate the Clean Water Act. In here, they talk about the Texas EPA issuing the two permits. There's the MSGP, the general permit, and the individual permit. Under the general permit, you can do whatever you want with specified non-stormwater discharges. If you don't qualify for that one, you have to get the TPDES general permits, the individual permits. And they say, ultimately, the defendant's industrial activity is not covered by the general permit, and the defendant's required to obtain the individual permit. Okay. So they did what they were supposed to do here. So, and notice the court saying, I'm not getting involved in this because everybody agrees that they don't qualify for the discharge permit. So they're agreeing that the general permit doesn't qualify anymore. If everybody agreed, great. Now they're saying an injunction is not appropriate. Why? Well, given defendant's compliance with the requirements of the agreed order, there is no alleged sufficient harm that outweighs the impacts of granting the injunction. So they point out this is really like, what have they done? What have they done that can't happen here? They say a court should weigh the harm of not granting an injunction against the harm of granting it and rule as equity dictates. And they say, well, technically SpaceX got the wrong permit. SpaceX collaborated with the Texas EPA to fix it. And also, to be fair, they contacted the EPA to get the right permit to start with, and the Texas EPA was like, yeah, it's okay. But more importantly, they paid a penalty. They applied for the individual permit, and they completed the technical review, and they qualified, and they stuck to the rules. And then finally, they're permitted to continue using the system pending the approval of their application. There's also evidence that they're not causing any harm to the environment. Now, remember, chat, the FAA, the Fish and Wildlife Service, and the Texas EPA. The FAA found there's no insignificant effects. The Fish and Wildlife Service found the system would decrease the risk of harm. And most significantly, the Texas EPA said the defendant should be able to continue using the system pending their application because there are no environmental effects. And now they point out the harms. Unable to launch would create various delaying consequences for the public. It would harm, the contracts for the Artemis program and the Human Landing System program worth billions of dollars. This would have an impact national security by halting the rocket cargo program. It also would harm the Starlink and Starshield programs. And yes, the DoD uses Starlink as well. And it would hinder the defendant's ability to provide disaster relief, such as those in hurricanes Helene and Milton. There are very real consequences. And there are lesser remedies that are appropriate. If there's a lesser remedy, you seek that remedy instead. There are lesser remedies like fines and criminal penalties, as shown by the defendant's payment of roughly $150,000 in penalties. So the purpose of the Clean Water Act is to ensure integrity of the waters, not the permit process. And this is where the judge is like, look, you don't get to fuck with it. They did what you wanted. We're protecting the water, not making sure people have permits. The Texas EPA and the defendant have come to a resolution that does exactly what the Clean Water Act was designed to do: protect the nation's waters. This court will not upend that over a technical violation. Therefore, the motion for injunction is denied. SpaceX is hereby ordered to continue the process for obtaining the permit through the Texas EPA and comply with all requirements under the agreed order with the Texas EPA and promptly notify this court of any developments related to their permit application. So as soon as SpaceX has a change in their permit application, they have to tell the court. And then at that point, it's done. So, yeah, hippies BTFO'd, total hippie death, total communist death, total people opposing Elon Musk death, total deep state death, total deep state death. Monster kill. Yeah, there you go. As I made the thumbnail, there's a lot of mad people out there. Squizgar says for $5, Elon was just experimenting with a crossover with the boring company when he bored a hole in the ground. Yeah. Nico says, in my best cog voice. Oi! Or Elon done drag a poof off a bundle of branches, blimey. And cog voice. Yes. Squizgar says the new pad is going to use a flame trench. Yes. The new pad system they're developing is going to do like NASA does, where they have the flame trenches shooting out the sides. If you ever seen the Soyuz platforms over at the Baikonur Cosmodrome, there's flame trenches and stuff. They had a problem here because when they were digging, they were not very high above sea level. And at NASA, they built up the ground and then dug flame trenches. So here they had a problem with the water table. So they were trying to avoid problems. But yes, the new stuff won't even need the water system. Jefferson says, I hear environmental claims in California are worse than for the feds. Oh, yeah, the California EPA is not a joke. Not a joke. Remember, chat, the reason why our gas cans suck is because the California Air Resources Board, not because of the federal government. Remember that. Your gas cans have all those goofy doohickeys on them because of a California state level agency, not because of a federal government mandate. Really makes you think. Really makes you think, doesn't it? Makes you think a lot. Makes you think a lot. Stephen Cooper says the rockets are too spicy. Yes, they are. And then Epic Fantasy for $10 doodles says, answer the question, Sean. Sean! Will Ricada go down for hacking privacy felonies along with Felton, the PDF file? I don't know. Ultimately, they could leverage this out as something get taken care of. I still think what he did was very stupid. Jerking around and having access to private data. Like, if Aaron's got any baking data on there, and you're really fucked now, bud. Credit card data? Ooh, lad. It's not good. It's not a good look. Not a good look. Jefferson Post says, be truthful with those watermarks on the ecosystem. Yes. Yes. And then Maddie, you said what I do with the oil companies. We'll talk about that another day. But yeah, I didn't do this stuff, but I did other stuff. Nico says, yeah, leave Chad Zumach out of it. He's had a hard week. He lost Patreon. Really? That's a bummer. Why did he lose his Patreon? That sucks. And Mystery Sniper has been a member for 12 months. Thank you for the support. Saying, Sandwich Nerd, is it real Thomas will retire January 21st? I highly doubt it. I have not heard that. I have not heard any rumors. And we'll just double check. But no, there's a lot of ideas that he will retire. I mean, certainly he wants to retire. Clarence Thomas does not want to die on the bench. He wants to go out in his big RV and take his wife and go see the world. He likes camping or glamping, whatever you want to call it. Clarence Thomas likes he wants to go do retire guy shit. He doesn't want to die in the Supreme Court. He doesn't want to be Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So not yet. And I'm assuming he'd retire at some point right after that. There's also the idea Alito would retire very soon after as well because they are both old. And at that point, Trump will probably have the opportunity to put 5 justices on the Supreme Court. That's up there. I mean, like any more than that, and you're getting to like John Adams and like George Washington levels of like picking. And remember Sonia Sotomayor? Her health is not the best. Her health is not the best. Midnight XL says, "What about pee? Is there pee in the water?" No, and I don't think Elon Musk got on top of the water tanks and leaked into the water. So probably not. Probably not. Enter the name here. Bohemian says, tip, if you want to go visit Boca Chica in person, go there a long time ahead because the roadways will get closed down and you won't get in or out for hours. See, I think that'd be so. I want to go see a rocket launch. I never got to see, like, as a kid, we never got the chance to work it out for a space shuttle launch or, big launch out of Cape Canaveral. But yeah, SpaceX is launching out of Texas. That'd be fun. Like, rent a boat and go out on the water and watch it. Mr. Sniper says silicosis for the animals. Yeah, those poor animals. Jefferson Post says, now did Gina Carano get this level of attorneys? Yes, she did. And you know what? Chat, we need to catch up on Gina Carano's story because we covered it initially when we learned it's not a defamation case, but we never got to go any further than that, and we need to talk about it. EDW Raptor says so much for a short stream. Yeah, it's still short. It's under 3 hours. I hate Yankees. Like Yankees from the north, or you hate like New York Yankees? Because I could agree with the second one. What's your favorite jam for PB&J sandwiches? I mean, strawberries always, like, if it's grape or strawberry, grape all the time. And then if blackberry jam is done right, I will eat blackberry jam. over it. But not everybody does blackberry jam, right? And the thing is, you need blackberry. Like, I like blackberries when they're real tart. They're the best. Hold on 1 second. Yes, 2.0 wants you guys to know she likes blueberry. It's not really good. No one likes blueberry. It's not that important, chat. But yes, like the thing is with blackberries, though, I like blackberries like when you eat them to be very. I don't like them being super tart, but like they start to get tart after a while. Those are the best blackberries out there. I've had mulberry kind of jam before. That's not very good. But yeah, strawberry is always a winner. Grape, I'd put grape as like a last choice if I had to. Drew says this was a banger. Well, thank you. Cedar Rose says for two loonies or one toonie. Here's a tip, Sean. Sean, a tip. Okay. The colostomy bag's been a member for 11 months. Thank you for your support, Mystery Sniper. Thank you for sticking around. I appreciate you guys hanging out for as long as you have. Says, what are my thoughts on the 22nd Amendment? I mean, I don't know if it's a bad idea that we do have term limits. I mean, term limits are a good thing, chat. Now, are you asking how does this work with Trump? Well, I mean, he's got one more term. I don't think term limits are bad. And the president shouldn't be the only one to get term limits. I think Congress should have term limits as well. And then I Hate Yankee says, try Mayhaw jam. Is this a joke? If I Google it, I'm not going to find like a guy like humping another dude or Destiny and Nick Fuentes humping. What's Mayhaw jam? Oh, okay. Mayhaw jam is a jelly made from berry, sugar, lemon juice, and pectin. Huh. Mayhaw berries. I don't know what a mayhaw is. Yeah, I understand there's a yes, sweetheart, thank you. I know there's a difference. But what are mayhaws? So mayhaws are small edible fruits that grow on the mayhaw tree. It's a member of the rose family. Well, what I still don't know what a mayhaw tree is. A mayhaw tree. Okay, here we go, chat. Let's see here. The mayhaw. Okay. Mayhaws are a name given to a fruit. Hold on here. We're gonna look this up together. The mayhaw. So this article needs additional sources. Okay, whatever. It grows throughout the southern U.S. It grows in moist soil near rivers and creek bottoms under hardwood trees. It's also found in the bayous, such as near Caddo Lake on the Texas-Louisiana border. The fruit ripens in April and late May. Just the name Mayhaw. Okay. Wow, that happens very quickly. You collect them out of boats, collect out of the water from boats. Okay. Never heard of these before. Huh. Maybe we'll have to try that next spring. You know what, chat? Maybe we'll try it next spring. We're coming up on it. Moist. They look like grape-sized tomatoes. That sounds interesting. So, they're delicious, just like crab apples. They look like cran apples. Yeah, that's what they kind of look like in the pictures here. Jam is so easy to make, yes. And then there's jelly, and then there's preserves. 2.0 wants to make sure we know that. Yamal says, we never had term limits before FDR, and it was fine. Well, nobody ever won 3 terms. We never had a 3-term president, much less a 4-term president. We didn't have that problem. And then we had FDR the commie who didn't want to leave. So, fun fact: Trump is the only president. What's that, honey? What'd you say? No, they put it in place after FDR. No, he had 4 terms. Yes, but there were no 3-term presidents. There's only been a 4-term president. I mean, are you going to play the? Are you going to deprecate this? Well, actually, FDR had 3 terms. I mean, FDR was the 4-term. What? Okay, Nick. Some days I think you could have worked for Biden as a press secretary, baby. Some days. Siobhan says, wow, something new to try. Yeah. Maddie B says, the state fruit of Louisiana. So Valiant Renegade knows what a mayhaw is. Okay. Moist discharge of the launching. Yes. The discharge from the deluge system at SpaceX is so moist. It's moist. It gets the ground moist. My friend gets them during turkey season. Okay. Crab apples are disgusting. Yeah, I wouldn't do it. Stacy says, Sean, you even make jam? No, my mom does. My mom made a shitload of applesauce this year. But yeah, my mom makes some good strawberry jam. Very good strawberry jam. Benjamin says, I'll send you Redbud jelly next year. Okay. And Nero's saying mayhaw jam is castor bean jam. Are you making a ricin joke? Because that sounds a little scary. That sounds really bad if you're making a ricin joke. That does not sound like something I want. That does not sound like something I want. Tim Beatty says, what about butters? I've had like apple butter, but that's the only butter I've ever had. It's okay. Apple butter is like I mean, it's a thing. I've never been like, oh my god, it's the best thing ever. There is an apple butter festival here in Ohio. It's over in Grand Rapids, Ohio, just outside of Toledo. And what better way to celebrate the middle of June when it's like 90 degrees outside and the bees are attacking you than having apple butter? And you literally see swarms of bees around every garbage can. Like, yeah, no thanks. No thanks. Shinohara says, at least you don't have our term system. No re-election, but unlimited terms. Yeah, but, when you have a parliamentary system, though, I think that's different. I'm assuming that's what you have, a parliamentary system. You can always call snap elections. I mean, it's a lot easier. You're not stuck every 4 years. Robert Lawrence says, jam is better than jelly. Gunmetal says, FDR couldn't stand for a 3rd term. You also couldn't stand Stephen Hawking. Puffer Smile says 2.0 needs a mic. Don't encourage her, chat. She does have a mic. She's got a mic if she wants one. Oh. Benjamin Lewis says, I second Stabby. The boomstick stream was so annoying. What? Oh, yeah, the Illinois one, yes. You get him 2.0. No. Yes, and actually. Oh my god, you guys. Are currents still illegal? I don't know. Right there. Anodyne says we got the greatest moisture. The most humidity. We're drenched. Yes, we've got the greatest moisture, folks. The most humidity. We're drenched. Everyone says we're drenched. By far, we're the most drenched nation in the world. Can't ever find strawberry jam. Oh. There's all kinds of strawberry fields around here. Yeah, it's moist rice, and it sounds like rice, and that's what I thought it would be. It's doable, Sean. I don't want to find out. Like, I don't want to make a rice and chutney. That sounds really bad. Oh. How about hogshead cheese? I don't think I've had that before. Well, yes, muscadine wine is really good. Will Reed says, is there a mic in the kitchen? No, I actually take care of the cooking. My opponent doesn't stand for America, quote Herbert Hoover. Why are currents illegal? Because they're an invasive species. Yeah, it's a threat to it's an invasive species. You can grow currants, but they're not sold and farmed in the United States. Yeah, that's a problem. Oh God, you guys are all far ahead here. The license plate says Stonies. Yes, it does. Jumbo Dunn says, let's see the cabinets. Oh. All right, Chad. I think we're all caught up here.
They all have doors.
Yes, all our cabinets do have doors, 100%. It's Cedar Rose. I want to make sure. I said, here's a tip, Sean. Sean, a tip. Well, thank you, Cedar Rose. I appreciate it. Go to sleep, nerd. Put your mom. You will go to sleep, or I will put you to sleep, Grandma. Read the name tag. You're in my world now. We'll do a locals kitchen stream, maybe. Thank you for not installing Windows on your cabinets. I mean, I don't get that joke. Did I cover the release of the Destiny videos yet? Why are you okay, chat? Here's the deal. With what we know about Destiny, why are you surprised any of that? Like, at this point, I'm waiting for one where him and Vosh are like 69ing each other. You shouldn't be surprised that's going to be out there at some point, okay? The Destiny stuff is just ridiculous. Oh. Now, the other thing... that's the problem here. So I'm not going to talk about the Destiny videos anymore, Jordan. They're out there. Oh my God, go find them on your own. They're disgusting. Haschick says, please cover Gina Carano. Well, hey, remember, guys, we have a long weekend. There's a lot of stuff we can do coming up. Destiny's child. Destiny's kid is actually pretty based, apparently. His kid trolls the fuck out of him. So, yes, don't forget, Destiny, Vosh, and a horse. Yes. Will you calm down? People just want you to talk about other dudes sucking each other's dicks. Yeah, I know. That's really what we want. Yes, Nick Fuentes and Destiny probably play gay twister with each other to, tie this all back together to the Stonies license plate. Oh. The Farms provides. Oh, yeah. Yes, it does, chat. Yes, it does. Yes, and by the way, chat, we are at the Qatar Grand Prix. We are for Formula One this week. And Maddie was asking, and I just had to double check. There's pics on my Discord. Great, that's what I really need on there. Thanks. Yes, but who wore the cat ears? Maybe they both wore cat ears. But yes. Yes, the Qatar Grand Prix is this weekend. So that should be fun. Snoop says football all day tomorrow. Yes. Let's go, Michigan. Beat Ohio State. Come on. I know it's not going to happen. It's going to be a bloodbath, but go blue. Go blue. Go blue. Were you a fan of Senna or Prost? Well, I mean, I'm 39. How old do you think I was when that happened? I mean, I was 9 years old when Ayrton Senna died. Actually, hold on. Wait, he died in, hold on. When did he die here? I was 8 years old when Ayrton Senna died. So I wasn't even old enough. Like, I'm 8 years old. I had no idea. So Jim says, I thought you were in your 60s. No, I'm 39. I get I got a lot of gray hair, but yeah. Angela says I'm older than you, apparently. Has Chick says, pray the gray away. Well, I vote for Eisenhower Stevenson. Fuck you. Let me tell you about my time in Nam, chat. But praying the gray away, well, we tried to, but we didn't know, there wasn't any praying the gray away tonight. I get that. Some nights we're praying the gray away, some nights we're not. But yeah, pretty quiet night for that, chat. You know, that's the thing, chat. If we don't have no memberships, the Grays are going to take back over. Gunmetal says nom, like spelled M-O-M, like it's anime con. Yes, because you're so fat, you went to nom, 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 not nam. Ag says Georgia Tech. Georgia's in the third overtime. Woo! The rambling wreck from Georgia Tech. John Willis, we didn't hit the goal, and then it's like Grays forever. No. And then EDW Raptor comes in with 20 subs. He said, Grays, not today, Grays. Not today. I'm going to pray you away. Well, 20 you are no longer gray. With the 20 subs. No, Gray Lives Matter. No, they don't. Yes, get fucked, Grays. Crescent Fresh as I highlight my soul patch. It doesn't. I don't even have like good definition on it, so no. And it's kind of weird because it's like there's a bunch of that comes through it, so it's not going to work too long. Justin says I'll trade you my receding hairline for your grace. Nope. See, I'm happy to keep that. It stays. Chad. It works. I'll keep the hair. Like I said, I'll keep the gray hair. Roland says I'm immune to the green. Oh, EDWF says, hell yeah, you got TV's Will Heron. Well, congrats, Will. Angela says, I still rise. You shall arise a green. I wish you could like pinpoint the gifts. Because like because I have the 10 a month, I would so turn around and start targeting certain people. You'd be like, I'm a green. I'd be like, not, or I'm a gray. I'd be like, not anymore. Not anymore. It would be great. It would be so much fun. And let's see, what do I have right now? Membership gifting. Oh, I still have 10 for this month I got to give out. Hold on here. We're going to go bow. And we're going to do, look at this chat. Look at this gifting tonight. Praying the gray away tonight, chat. Look at this. Potentially criminal with 10 subs. Yeah, him and EDW Raptor doing their part. Who got one? I've been holding out, chat. I thought I used them up already. That was my bad. All right. So who else we got? The amateur iconoclast. He's like, not just you guys. I'm helping too. I'm doing my part with 5 more subs. Yes. All night, chat. All night. You know what? We're still going to do this a little bit tonight, chat. We're going to take a break here real quick, couple minutes, regroup, and we're going to get to this bad boy and see what we can do. Maddie, I hope you're sticking around. So I'm going to need some advice probably on how to get started. Hashtag says, see, I told you, praying it away. Yes. Yes, praying it away. Oh, I can pick and choose on Twitch and on YouTube. What are we doing? We're going to start painting this. We're going to paint this. We're going to try the bottom and get it going. Did I see Danny Ann announce she's pregnant? No. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Congratulations, Danny. I did not see that. When did she make the announcement? That's really awesome for her. That's awesome news. That's really good news. That's very good news for her. Congratulations, Danny. And I'll reach out to you and say that as well. But oh, bless you. Well, thank you. Benjamin Lewis gifted 1 sub. Thank you, Benjamin. Thanks for the support and the generosity. Thank you for all you guys, for all your support. No, guys, just Danny on, apparently. Not April. Stop with that. Stop with that stuff. Come on, chat. So. In the name of King David and the modern King David, Nick, yes. Nick will give Danny $1,000 for emergency medical expenses. Funny. Like, Laura Owen's pregnant or pregnant? No, it sounds like Danny's pregnant. That's awesome news. So. All right, chat. So we're going to take a little bit of a break here, and we're going to get started on the plane for a little while. See what we can do. Do I ever accidentally sign into my fake Ricada account? No, never. Nope. Not at all. Not at all, chat. So that snort's clippable. All is that a snort? That's me going like that, not up here, it's out there. So yeah, we're gonna take a couple minutes and we'll get back to this chat. So we'll have some Bob Ross going and some painting going, and I think there's a little bit of snow drifting around outside. It'll be a nice cold night to hang tight. So guys, that covers it. Congrats again, Elon. You defeated the hippies and the communists and the deep state. And Jeff Bezos, probably. And Global ATK. And Vestachny. And Roscosmos. They all came after you, and you stand tall. And Boeing. So, it's Orbital ATK, not Global ATK. Orbital ATK. So. Let's see here. Where did I lose it to? Okay, so buy Clyde coin on the Black Friday special. Yes. All right, chat. So, well, thanks again, everybody. Thank you for all support. Everybody on Twitch, thank you guys for being here, and everybody on YouTube. Thank you so much, guys. And remember, till next time, just because Elon did it, you commies and environmentalists must suffer. Suffer, communists. Suffer, hippies. And suffer, deep state. Good night, chat, and we'll see you guys in a couple of minutes. Take care, everybody. Bye now.
Weapons, blacksmithing, and models of planes, esoteric works, and even some trains. Much merriment had while drinking White Claws, tips on hunting, and even talking the law. just don't talk to cops. Even when they nab you on illegal stops. Just 'cause you did it doesn't mean you're guilty. But please talk to a local attorney.